I pressed my burned wrist against my apron, willing the pain to disappear. It wouldn't. The angry red mark throbbed with every heartbeat, a cruel reminder of what Mrs. Choi had done just an hour ago in the basement laundry room where no cameras could see. "Use this iron," she'd hissed, shoving the old appliance into my hands. I noticed immediately that the handle was cracked, exposing bare wires that sparked when I plugged it in. "But Mrs. Choi, this isn't safe. Are you refusing a direct order?" Her eyes had narrowed into slits. "Mr. Kong specifically requested his shirts be pressed for tonight's meeting. Unless you'd like to explain to him personally why you failed." My stomach had twisted. Mr. Kong.
Zia Sung Kang.
The man who owned this sprawling estate, who commanded respect and fear in equal measure throughout the city, whose very name made hardened men lower their eyes. The man whose dark gaze sometimes lingered on me a moment too long when I served his morning coffee, making my heart race in ways I didn't fully understand. I couldn't disappoint him. So I'd taken the broken iron. The burn happened exactly as I'd feared. The exposed wire had touched my skin as I worked, and I'd bitten back a scream as white-hot pain seared through my wrist. Mrs. Choi had watched it happen. She'd stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a small smile playing at her lips. "Clumsy girl," she'd said, though we both knew the truth. Then she'd step closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You'll keep this to yourself. If Mr. Kong finds out, I'll tell him you were careless, that you damaged his property with your incompetence. You'll be fired before sunset. Do you understand? Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you." I nodded, tears burning in my eyes. I needed this job. My mother's medical bills were crushing our family. The generous salary Mr. Kong paid was the only thing keeping us afloat. So now I stood in his study, my burned wrist hidden behind my back, trying to keep my hands steady as I poured his afternoon tea. The silver teapot felt impossibly heavy. Every muscle in my arm screamed as I tilted it, watching the amber liquid stream into his cup. "Thank you, Jimin." His voice was deep, smooth, with an edge of something dangerous that always made my pulse quicken. I'd been working in his household for 3 months, and I still couldn't look directly at him without my breath catching. Jae-sung Kong was beautiful in a way that seemed almost unfair. Sharp cheekbones, intense dark eyes that saw everything, black hair that fell perfectly across his forehead. But it was more than his looks. It was the power that radiated from him, the controlled danger in every movement, the intelligence that glittered in his gaze. "You're welcome, sir," I managed, setting the teapot down. I started to step back, but my burned wrist brushed against the table edge. Pain exploded up my arm. I couldn't stop the small gasp that escaped my lips, or the way I flinched violently. Silence fell over the room. I froze, my heart hammering. When I dared to glance up, I found Mr. Kong staring at me with an intensity that made my knees weak. He'd abandoned the documents he'd been reviewing. His full attention was fixed on me now, and something in his expression had changed. "Yimin." My name on his lips sounded like a command. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, sir." I apologize for the disturbance. I bowed quickly, keeping my injured arm tucked against my body. "Will there be anything else?" "Stop." The single word froze me in place. I heard the whisper of expensive fabric as he stood, the quiet footsteps as he rounded his desk. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Look at me." I raised my eyes slowly, fighting the urge to run. He stood less than a foot away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and woodsy that made my head spin. His jaw was tight, and there was something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "I asked you a question," he said quietly. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong, Mr. Kong."
I'm perfectly fine.
"You're lying." He stepped even closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You flinched. You gasped. And you're hiding your left arm behind your back. Show me. My mouth went dry. Sir, Show me. Now. It wasn't a request. The authority in his voice made it impossible to disobey, even as panic clawed at my chest. If he saw the burn, if he asked questions, Mrs. Choi would make good on her threats. I'd lose everything. But I couldn't refuse him. Slowly, trembling, I brought my arm forward. I kept my sleeve pulled down, covering the injury. Mr. Kang's eyes dropped to my wrist. For a long moment, he just stared. Then, with movements so gentle they seemed at odds with the deadly power I knew he possessed, he reached out and wrapped his fingers around my hand. His touch was warm, careful. It sent electricity racing up my arm that had nothing to do with the pain. What happened? He asked, his voice softer now but no less commanding. I burned myself while ironing. It was my own clumsiness. Show me. Sir, please. Yimin. He said my name like a warning and a caress all at once. Don't make me ask again. Tears pricked at my eyes. I couldn't lose this job. I couldn't fail my family. But the look in his eyes told me he wouldn't let this go, and some small, desperate part of me wanted him to see. Wanted someone to care. I watched, helpless, as his free hand moved to my sleeve. His fingers found the fabric and began to roll it up, slowly, inexorably, revealing inch by inch of burned skin. The moment he saw it, everything changed. His entire body went rigid. The gentleness in his touch transformed into something else, something cold and furious that made the air in the room feel suddenly dangerous. When his eyes met mine again, they were black with rage. Who did this to you? The question was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. I told you, I was careless. Don't. The word cracked through the air like a whip. Don't lie to me. This isn't from carelessness. This is from faulty equipment, and you tried to hide it. His thumb brushed the edge of the burn, so carefully it almost broke me.
Who did this?
A tear slipped down my cheek. I couldn't speak. If I told him the truth, Mrs. Choi would destroy me. But the fury in his eyes, the protective rage emanating from him, it made me want to tell him everything. Was it Choi Soo-jin? He asked, his voice deadly calm now. The head housekeeper? My sharp intake of breath was answer enough. His expression turned to stone. He released my hand carefully, as if I might shatter, and stepped back. When he spoke again, his voice carried the cold command of a man accustomed to absolute obedience. Come with me. I followed him because there was no other choice, my heart in my throat. He strode through the mansion's corridors with controlled fury in every step, and I had to nearly run to keep pace. Staff members we passed took one look at his face and scattered. We arrived at the main hall, a massive room with vaulted ceilings and marble floors where morning staff meetings were held. Mr. Kong walked to the center and turned to face me. Stay here, he commanded softly. Then, to the security guards stationed nearby, assemble every member of the household staff. Everyone. I want them in this hall in 5 minutes. The guard's face went pale, but he nodded and rushed off. I stood frozen, my injured wrist cradled against my chest. What was he doing? Panic rose in my throat. Mrs. Choi would know I'd told him. She'd. Yimin. Mr. Kang's voice pulled me from my spiraling thoughts. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? I nodded, though I didn't believe him. Within minutes, they came. Every housekeeper, gardener, cook, security guard, and driver employed in the Kong estate filed into the hall, their faces marked with confusion and concern. Mrs. Choi arrived last, her expression composed, though I saw the flash of alarm in her eyes when she spotted me standing beside Mr. Kong. When everyone had gathered, Mr. Kong raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. "I've called you here because we have a serious problem in this household. It has come to my attention that one of our staff members has been injured due to unsafe working conditions." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Choi's face remained perfectly neutral, but I saw her fingers tighten in the fabric of her skirt. Mr. Kong continued, each word precise and cutting. Jimin was given a broken iron to use. An iron with exposed wiring that caused her significant injury. He gestured to me, and I felt dozens of eyes turn my way. I want to know who is responsible. The silence that followed was suffocating. "I'll ask once," Mr. Kong said, his voice dropping to something soft and lethal. "Who gave her that iron?" Mrs. Choi stepped forward, her chin held high. She was a handsome woman in her early 50s, with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun and an air of unshakable authority. Or at least, that's how she'd always seemed to me. "Sir, if I may," she said smoothly. "Jimin came to me this morning complaining that she couldn't complete her assigned tasks. I directed her to the laundry room, where several irons are stored. If she chose to use faulty equipment despite knowing better, I'm afraid that's a matter of her own poor judgment." Gasps echoed through the hall. I felt my face burn with humiliation and anger. She was lying, twisting everything, just as she'd threatened to do. But Mr. Kong didn't react. He simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Is that so?" he asked quietly. "Yes, sir. I've been managing this household for 15 years. I would never knowingly endanger any staff member." "Interesting." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Then perhaps you can explain this." He turned the screen toward the assembled staff. I couldn't see what it showed from where I stood, but I watched the color drain from Mrs. Choi's face. "Security footage, Mr. Kong explained, his voice conversational now, which somehow made it more terrifying. "From the hallway outside the laundry room. No camera inside that room, unfortunately, something I'll be correcting immediately. But the audio is quite clear. Would you like me to play it for everyone? I have you on recording saying, and I quote, 'Use this iron,' followed by Jimin expressing concern about safety, followed by you threatening her job if she refused." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Mrs. Choi's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Mr. Kong pocketed his phone and took a single step toward her. The whispering died instantly. "You gave a junior staff member faulty equipment," he said, each word falling like a hammer blow. "You ignored her safety concerns. You stood by and watched as she was injured. And then you threatened her into silence." His eyes were black ice. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" "Sir, Mrs. Choi's composed mask cracked. "She's been distracting you. I've seen how you watch her, how you—" "Enough." The single word cracked through the air like a gunshot. "Your jealousy, your insecurity, your petty cruelty. None of it excuses what you've done. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you to pack your belongings. You have 20 minutes. Mrs. Choi's face went white, then red. "You can't do this. I've given 15 years to this household. All for some little girl who—" "20 minutes, Mr. Kong repeated, his voice deadly quiet. "Or you leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. Choose." Two security guards materialized at Mrs. Choi's sides. She looked around the hall wildly, perhaps seeking support, but every face was turned away. Then her gaze landed on me, and the hatred in her eyes made me take an involuntary step back. Mr. Kong moved instantly, positioning himself between us. The message was clear. Mrs. Choi laughed bitterly. "You'll regret this," she hissed, though whether she was speaking to him or to me, I couldn't tell. Then the guards were leading her away, her footsteps echoing through the silent hall. When she was gone, Mr. Kong turned to address the remaining staff. The fury had drained from his expression, replaced by something colder, more final. "Let me be absolutely clear," he said. "Every person in this household is under my protection. Every single one. If any of you ever witness mistreatment, unsafe conditions, or abuse of any kind, you come to me directly. And if any of you," his gaze swept the crowd, "ever harm someone under my roof, what happened to Mrs. Choi will seem merciful by comparison. Is that understood?" A chorus of "Yes, sir," echoed through the hall. "Good. You're all dismissed. Except Jimin." My heart lurched as the staff filed out, casting curious glances my way. Within moments, the vast hall was empty except for the two of us. Mr. Kong turned to me, and the cold authority melted from his face. What replaced it was concern so genuine it made my chest ache. "Let me see your wrist again," he said softly. I extended my arm, and he examined the burn with gentle fingers, his jaw tightening. "Come," he said finally. "We need to treat this properly." "Sir, you don't have to." "Jimin." He looked up, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. "Stop arguing with me." He led me through the mansion, but instead of heading toward the staff quarters or the kitchen where the first aid supplies were kept, he took me upstairs. To the private wing. To his personal rooms. My pulse skyrocketed. "Mr. Kong, I shouldn't. You shouldn't have been hurt in the first place." He cut me off, opening the door to his bedroom. "But you were, and I'm going to take care of it."
See.
He gestured to the leather sofa near the windows. I perched on the edge, hyper-aware of how inappropriate this was, how dangerous. A maid in her employer's private bedroom. But when he returned from his bathroom with a first aid kit and knelt in front of me, all those thoughts scattered. Jae-sung Kong, one of the most powerful men in Seoul, a man who commanded an empire both legitimate and otherwise, was kneeling at my feet. "This might sting," he warned, his voice low and gentle. He opened a tube of burn ointment and carefully applied it to my wrist. His touch was impossibly tender. I watched his face as he worked, the concentration in his eyes, the slight furrow between his brows, the way his jaw clenched whenever he noticed me wince. This close, I could see the faint scar along his cheekbone, the fullness of his lips, the length of his eyelashes. "Why didn't you come to me?" he asked suddenly, not looking up from his careful ministrations. "When she gave you that iron. When you were hurt. Why didn't you find me?" I swallowed hard. I was afraid. She threatened to have me fired if I said anything. And I need this job. My mother is sick and I know about your mother. His eyes lifted to mine, and the understanding in them nearly undid me. "I know about the medical bills. I know why you're here." One corner of his mouth lifted in the ghost of a smile. "I know everything about everyone who works for me, Jimin. Especially the ones who catch my attention." Heat flooded my cheeks. "Sir, do you know what I see when I look at you?" he asked, his voice dropping lower. He'd finished applying the ointment and was now wrapping my wrist in soft gauze with practiced precision. "I see someone who works harder than anyone else in this household. Someone who never complains, who smiles at everyone, who treats even the most difficult people with kindness. I see someone who pours my tea with her hands shaking because she's in pain, because she's terrified, but still refuses to fail in her duties." Tears burned in my eyes. "You see too much. I don't see nearly enough." He secured the bandage and then, to my shock, lifted my hand to his lips and pressed a soft kiss to my palm, just above the gauze. "But I'm going to. Starting now." The kiss sent fire through my veins. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Mr. Kong." "Jae-sung," he corrected, his thumb stroking over my knuckles. "When we're alone, call me Jae-sung." "I can't." You're my employer. This is complicated, he finished for me. I know, but I've been watching you for 3 months, Jimin, fighting this. Telling myself it was inappropriate, that I shouldn't get involved. His eyes met mine, blazing with an intensity that made me shiver. And then today I saw someone hurt you. I saw that mark on your skin, and something in me broke. Do you understand? I shook my head mutely. He rose from his knees and sat beside me on the sofa, still holding my hand. We were so close that our shoulders touched, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I'll make this simple, he said, his voice rough with emotion. From now on, you're under my personal protection. Not as a maid, but as someone who matters to me. No one touches you. No one threatens you. No one makes you afraid. And if they try... His free hand came up to cup my cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. I'll destroy them. Why? The word escaped as barely a whisper. Why me? Because when you pour my coffee in the morning, you remember exactly how I like it, he said softly. Because you're the only person in this entire mansion who looks at me like I'm just a man, not a monster. Because your smile is the highlight of my day, even though you try to hide it behind professionalism. Because you're brave and kind and stubborn, and you make me want to be someone worthy of that smile. My heart was hammering so hard, I was sure he could hear it. Ziesung. The sound of his name on my lips did something to him. His eyes darkened, and his hand tightened almost imperceptibly on mine. Say it again, he commanded softly. Ziesung. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away.
But I didn't want to.
Despite the fear, despite the impossibility of this, despite everything, I didn't want to. His lips brushed against mine, soft as a whisper, asking, waiting. I answered by closing the distance between us. The kiss was everything and nothing like I'd imagined. Gentle at first, almost tentative, as if he was afraid of breaking me. But when I sighed against his mouth, something shifted. His hand slid into my hair, angling my head back, and the kiss deepened into something that made my toes curl and my head spin. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Tell me this is okay, he said, his voice rough. Tell me I'm not taking advantage. You're not, I whispered. You saved me.
You protected me.
You. I should have protected you before you were hurt, he interrupted, self-recrimination coloring his tone. I should have seen what Choi was doing. Should have noticed. I pressed my fingers to his lips, silencing him. You can't see everything. You're not responsible for her cruelty. He caught my hand and held it against his chest, where I could feel his heart racing. I am now. You're my responsibility now, Jimin. Mine to protect. Mine to care for.
Mine.
The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel safe in a way I'd never experienced before. What happens tomorrow? I asked, reality beginning to creep back in. When the other staff see. They'll see exactly what I want them to see, he said firmly. You'll move into the East Wing guest suite. Better security, closer to my rooms. You'll have a new position, my personal assistant. Better pay, better hours, better everything. His eyes searched mine. And when you're ready, when you're comfortable, we'll figure out what this is between us. No pressure.
No expectations.
Just possibilities. And if I'm never ready, I had to ask, even though the thought of not exploring this connection made my chest ache. Then you'll still have the best position in this household, and I'll still protect you with everything I have, he said without hesitation. What I feel for you isn't conditional on you returning it. Your safety, your well-being, that's not negotiable. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks, but these were different. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of something that felt dangerously close to hope. I'm already ready, I whispered. I've been watching you too, Jae-sung. I just never thought. Sure. He pulled me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me carefully, mindful of my injury. You don't have to explain. I know. We stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the sun setting outside his windows and painting the room in shades of gold and amber. My burned wrist throbbed dully, but it was a distant sensation compared to the warmth spreading through my chest. Your mother's medical bills, Jae-sung said suddenly, his voice rumbling against my ear. They're taken care of. As of tonight. Consider it a signing bonus for your new position. I pulled back to stare at him. You can't. I can, and I did. His expression was set, unmovable. You work for me now, Jimin. That means you're mine to take care of, in every way. Get used to it. Ziaesung. No arguments. He silenced me with another kiss, this one slow and sweet and full of promises. When he pulled away, his eyes were warm. You've spent months taking care of everyone else. Let me take care of you for a change. What could I say to that? This man, this powerful, dangerous, impossibly gentle man, was offering me everything I'd been too afraid to even dream of. Safety, protection,
Care.
and maybe, possibly, something more. Okay, I whispered. His smile was brilliant, transforming his whole face. Good. Now let's get some proper food in you. I know for a fact the staff kitchen doesn't feed you enough. He stood, pulling me gently to my feet. And then we're going to establish some new rules for this household. Starting with, anyone who even looks at you wrong answers to me. As he led me toward his private dining room, his hand warm and steady around mine, I couldn't help but smile. Just this morning, I'd been a frightened maid, burned and threatened and alone. Now, I was something else entirely. I was protected. I was valued. I was seen. And as Jae-sung pulled out a chair for me, as he called down to the kitchen with instructions to prepare my favorite meal. How did he even know my favorite meal? I realized something else. I was falling in love with a man who had already fallen for me. The burn on my wrist would heal. The fear Mrs. Choi had instilled in me would fade. But this feeling, this connection, the way Jae-sung looked at me like I was something precious and irreplaceable, that was just beginning. And I couldn't wait to see where it led. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. I love you all.